You're signing this tonight, Emily. We already used the money, my mother said, with 21 people still holding their forks over Easter ham. Within 6 weeks, my parents had taken an $18,400 insurance check in my name, run up $11,267 on two credit cards they opened with my social security number, and helped suspend me from my job by telling police I stole from my father's roofing company. Then, on June 11, 2024, Linda Mercer walked into a conference room carrying a blue accordion folder with 32 pages inside. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My name is Emily Parker. I'm 25 years old. Now let me take you back to Harlow and Westfield, Ohio, in January of 2024. At that point, I was working patient access at Westfield Regional Medical Center. My shift started at 6:30 every morning, and by 6:18 I was usually standing under fluorescent light with burnt coffee in a paper cup, logging into Epic while the automatic doors breathed cold air into the lobby. It was not glamorous work, but it was stable. I made $22.40 an hour, I had decent health insurance, and I was saving for a better apartment than the basement studio I rented off Stockton Road for $925 a month. My parents lived in Westfield in a beige two-story house with stone trim around the mailbox and a garage that always smelled like gasoline and cedar. My father, David Parker, owned Parker Ridge Roofing. My mother, Karen Parker, handled the books and volunteered at Hillside Covenant Church, where people used words like faithful and generous about her. My older brother, Ryan Parker, was 29 and worked for Dad as a project manager. Ryan was the kind of man who could apologize without changing direction. He had a soft voice, a backward baseball cap, and a talent for making bad things sound temporary. The only person in that orbit who ever spoke plainly was Linda Mercer. Linda was 68, a retired escrow officer, a widow with silver hair cut at her jaw, and a voice that never needed a second try. She had known my mother for years, lived 2 streets over, and came to most of our holiday dinners because her only daughter lived in Oregon. Linda always brought deviled eggs in the same yellow Pyrex dish and always noticed paperwork before people did. Once, when I was 19 and signing a lease too fast, she tapped the page with one red nail and told me, "Paper leaves fingerprints even when people think it doesn't." I remembered that sentence later. The other steady person in my life was Noah Bennett. Noah was 27, worked nights as a respiratory therapist, and had the kind of calm that lowered the temperature in a room. We had been together just under a year. He never tried to finish my sentences. He never told me to calm down. When I got overwhelmed, he would put a glass of ice water near my hand and wait until I came back to myself. On January 23, 2024, a Ford F-150 ran a red light at Maple and Chandler. My 2018 Honda Civic spun once, hit the curb, and died with the radio still on. I remember the smell first, powder from the airbag and something hot and metallic. My phone felt strange in my hand, too light and too important at the same time. I called my mother before I called anyone else. She answered on the second ring and sounded perfect. Not scared, not angry, just ready. "Stay where you are. Your father is coming." At the scene, Dad put a hand on my shoulder and looked over the car like he was assessing storm damage. Mom took over the talking. Insurance, towing, where the title was, whether my mailing address had been updated. It had not. I had moved into my basement studio 3 months earlier and never changed the address on one of my old policy documents. Mom said that was fine. She said if any paperwork came to their house, she would put it aside for me. Care and control sound the same when you are tired enough. For a few weeks after the accident, my parents acted like parents in a commercial. Mom brought soup, Dad looked at used cars online, Ryan offered to help me compare interest rates. I even spent 2 Sundays at their house sorting through replacement car listings while the dryer thumped in the laundry room and the kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner and pot roast. At one point, Ryan asked if I still used the same login questions on my credit accounts because he wanted to compare lender portals for me. I laughed and told him no because I did not share passwords. He smiled and said, "Worth a shot." I should have heard that differently. By March, the insurance adjuster from Farm Bureau had agreed to a payout of $18,400 for my totaled Honda after the loan payoff cleared. I planned every dollar before it arrived. $7,000 down on a used Toyota Corolla, $1,800 to finally pay off a care credit balance from dental work. The rest into savings, because I was tired of feeling one bad month away from panic. Then little things started shifting. Mom asked twice if I was still using my old Wells Fargo account. Dad asked if I could help the business with a short paper trail issue for one weekend. Ryan called me on March 26th and asked what my full legal name was on my social security card, which was such a stupid question that I almost laughed again. Instead, I said, "Why would you need that?" He said, "Never mind, Dad's yelling about a bid packet." That is how family gets past your defenses. Not with one giant lie, with 100 small things that sound boring. On Easter Sunday, March 31st, the table was crowded. Ham, scalloped potatoes, Linda's deviled eggs, cheap white candles burning down into glass holders. My Aunt Teresa was there, 3 cousins, Ryan, my parents, and Linda at the far corner in a navy cardigan. The sun was coming through the back windows so hard it made the table look staged. We had just finished saying grace when my mother slid a manila envelope across the table and rested 2 fingers on it. "Open that," she said. Inside was a typed one-page statement. It said I had voluntarily loaned $18,400 to Parker Ridge Roofing on March 28, 2024, to support temporary operating expenses. At the bottom was a blank signature line with my printed name underneath. I looked up and asked, "What is this?" That is when my mother said the line you heard at the beginning. I did not answer her right away. My father set a pen beside my plate. Ryan would not look at me. I could hear the refrigerator motor and somebody's fork tapping a plate 2 seats down. Then Linda Mercer put down her napkin and said, "Karen, put that away. That girl did not loan you anything." The whole room changed when she said it. It was like somebody had opened a window and all the heat went out. I asked one question. "Where is my insurance check?" My father said, "The business needed float for payroll. It was a bridge, 2 weeks, tops." I remember staring at his hand on the pen, roofing grit still under his nails. He had always been rough around tools, rough around money, rough around anything he believed he owned. I stood up, folded the paper once, and put it back in the envelope. No. That was the moment the story stopped being about hurt feelings and became evidence. The next morning at 8:07, I called Farm Bureau from the employee parking lot before my shift. I still had my scrubs jacket on over my clothes because the wind was needling through the garage. After 9 minutes on hold, a claims specialist told me the check had already been negotiated on March 28th, deposited into a business account at First Valley Bank. I asked her to repeat it. She did. Then I asked for the image. She emailed it while I was still on the line. I opened it on my phone and saw my own name on the back, in a neat blue signature that was not mine. Under it was the mobile deposit stamp for Parker Ridge Roofing Operating. That was the hour I learned fraud can wear your last name and still be fraud. At lunch, I pulled my credit report in the break room with a vending machine humming behind me. 2 new accounts had been opened in February. A Capital One card with an $8,936 balance. A Synchrony line for $2,131 from Discount Tire and Electronics purchases. There was also a Verizon account in collections for $740. My score had dropped 112 points. I had not missed one payment on anything in my adult life. I called my mother first because some part of me still wanted an explanation that would let me wake up from it. She answered cheerful. "Hi, honey," I said. "You forged my signature and opened cards in my name." Her voice flattened. "Do not use words you do not understand." Then Dad got on the line. "No hello, just breathing and the sound of a truck door shutting." He said, "Family handles family. You start calling banks and police, and you will make this ugly for no reason." Ryan texted me 2 minutes later. It said, "We can fix this if you stop escalating." People say that when they are already standing on your neck. That week, my apartment application for a better place on Ashwood was denied. The property manager, a woman named Celeste Harmon, called me personally because she had already toured me through the unit. She sounded embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Emily. The credit report came back with recent delinquencies and possible identity concerns." I sat in my car after that call with both hands on the steering wheel and watched my own breath fog the windshield. $46 in checking, half a tank of gas, 2 uniforms in the back seat, a future I had already spent in my head, gone by lunchtime. Linda called that evening. She had gotten my number from my aunt. "I saw the look on your face yesterday," she said. "I wrote down exactly what I watched at that table and the time I left. If you need it, I have it." That was Linda. No big speeches, just a witness statement before anyone had asked. On April 3rd, I went to the Wells Fargo branch on Maple and closed the old account my parents had helped me open when I was 16. I opened a new account at Tri-County Credit Union, redirected my payroll, and changed every password I had by 11:14 that night. On April 4th, I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. On April 5th, I filed an identity theft report through the FTC website and a police report with Westfield Police. The officer at the desk, Miguel Santos, listened without interrupting and wrote down every amount. $18,400, $8,936, $2,331, $740. Saying the numbers out loud made the whole thing feel less insane. Facts do not need volume. Noah came over that night after his shift with 2 legal pads, blue sticky tabs, and a grocery bag that smelled like warm bread. He set them on my counter and said, "Start with dates." That was his whole speech. So I did. March 28th, check deposited. March 31st, affidavit at Easter. April 1st, bank confirmation. April 2, credit report. April 3, new account. April 4th, credit freeze. April 5th, police report. I built the timeline in black pen until my hand cramped. My mother started a different campaign. She texted churchwomen that I was under stress and not acting like myself. People I had known since youth group started sending messages that looked kind until you read them twice. "We are praying for whatever you are going through. Your mother is heartbroken. Let us know if addiction recovery resources would help." One woman left a sympathy card on my windshield at work with Psalm 46 written inside. Another asked if I had a gambling problem. My parents were not only stealing from me, they were writing the story around me before I could speak. Then Ryan called at 10:41 on April 9th. His voice sounded thin, like he was outside in the cold. "Dad said if you sign the loan letter, he'll move the money back and tell everybody it was a bookkeeping mistake." I asked, "Everybody meaning the banks or the police?" He went quiet for 3 full seconds. Then he said, "Just think about it." That silence told me more than the words did. 2 days later, I got the next escalation. A detective from Westfield PD left a voicemail asking me to call back about a theft complaint from Parker Ridge Roofing. According to the report my father filed, I had stolen a company laptop, altered customer payment records, and taken a $7,920 deposit from a re-roofing job. I had done part-time admin work for Dad on weekends during college, which meant I had once used their invoicing software. That was enough for him to make me sound plausible. I sat on the floor of my apartment with the phone in my hand, while the refrigerator clicked on and the room smelled like old coffee and laundry detergent. They were not trying to win an argument. They were trying to make me unemployable. After that, I stopped reacting where they could see it. No more late night calls, no more paragraphs, no more trying to explain basic reality to people committed to profit. I let every call go to voicemail. I screenshotted every text. I saved every envelope. I kept a plain white banker box under my kitchen table and labeled folders with dates and categories: banking, credit, employer, church, police. If somebody left a voicemail, I downloaded it. If somebody posted something vague on Facebook, I captured the timestamp and the comments underneath. Silence is not surrender when you are building a case. On April 12th, I met with a legal aid attorney named Melissa Kwan in a small office off State Street that smelled like copier toner and peppermint tea. She wore a charcoal sweater, read everything I brought, and never once asked me why my parents would do this. That helped more than sympathy would have. She looked at the Easter affidavit, the check image, the credit report, and Ryan's text. Then she said, "This is organized financial exploitation and coercion. You are going to stop speaking to them directly unless it is in writing." She gave me a checklist: certified disputes to the creditors, written demand for preservation of electronic records, request for the mobile deposit metadata from First Valley Bank, employment packet for HR, theft report response through counsel. I went home and turned my fear into tasks. Noah kept showing up without making himself the story. One night I was at my table sorting statements into piles when he came in from work, looked at the mess, and quietly started writing labels on the folder tabs in square block letters. Bank, cards, voicemails. He did not ask if I was okay. He put a grilled cheese sandwich beside my elbow and said, "You can build a case and still eat." That is one of the kindest things anyone has ever said to me. On April 17th, I drove to my parents' house at 2:10 in the afternoon to pick up my birth certificate and passport card. Melissa had told me to secure every identity document I could. Dad's truck was in the driveway, but he was out back with a compressor whining loud enough to shake the siding. Mom was not home. The house smelled like lemon oil and whatever candles she used to burn for company. My documents were supposed to be in the hallway linen closet. They were not there. I passed the home office on my way to the laundry room and saw the printer tray still open. Beside it was a blue plastic folder, half unzipped, with my name written on a sticky note in Ryan's handwriting. I was not there hunting for treasure. I was there for my passport card. But the folder was open, and the top page was a photocopy of my driver's license. Under that were copies of my social security card, the Farm Bureau check stub, a printed screenshot of the Capital One approval page, and a yellow legal pad with Ryan's writing on it. I knew his writing because he still made his capital R like a backward 6. The note said, MDOB, old address, mom maiden name, security answer is Daisy. Daisy was the name of my childhood dog. I took 14 photos in 41 seconds, put the papers back exactly the way I found them, and left with my passport card and birth certificate from a desk drawer in the same room. My hands were shaking so hard in the car that I had to sit there until the steering wheel stopped feeling slippery. That was the peace I had not gone looking for. I was prepared, and then the truth found me anyway. Melissa nearly smiled when I showed her the photos. "Good," she said. "Now we have premeditation on paper." While I was building quietly, my parents got louder. My mother made a Facebook post about betrayal in families and how sometimes parents must draw boundaries with adult children who make destructive choices. 43 people reacted. 6 commented that they were praying. My Aunt Teresa stopped inviting me to Sunday lunch. A woman from church asked if I needed a ride to counseling. The community did what communities do when a respectable person lies first. It filled in the blanks against the younger woman. On May 2nd, I was called into HR at Westfield Regional. Denise Alvarez, The employee relations manager shut the door gently and folded her hands on the table. My father had sent the hospital a certified packet alleging I stole from Parker Ridge Roofing and might be unsafe to keep in a financial access role. Because I handled patient registrations and insurance information, the hospital was placing me on unpaid administrative leave while compliance reviewed the complaint. I remember the exact sound my badge made when Denise deactivated it against the desk. A tiny plastic click. That is how long it took them to interrupt my life. I carried a box with my mug, my lunch bag, and a pair of spare sneakers through the lobby, where I had worked for 3 years. Nobody was cruel. That almost made it worse. People kept their eyes soft and their questions away. In the parking lot, Noah was already there. I had not called him yet. He took the box from my hands, set it in the trunk, and opened the passenger door for me. On the seat was a bottle of water and a clean hoodie. He did not say, "It will be okay." He said, "What is the next task?" That sentence saved me. The next tasks were ugly and dull and necessary. Melissa sent the hospital the timeline, the fraud reports, and the evidence photos. Detective Alana Ruiz from Westfield PD took over the case because it now involved identity theft and a false complaint with financial motive. First Valley Bank produced records showing the insurance check had been deposited through a device registered to Ryan Parker's phone number. Capital One traced the online application to an IP address assigned to my parents' house. Synchrony matched the same address. Verizon closed the collections line within 8 days after receiving my affidavit. And still my parents would not stop. My mother left me 14 voicemails in 5 days. In one of them she said, "If you loved this family, you would end this before your father loses everything." In another she said, "Your brother has a wife and a baby to think about." On May 18th, Ryan texted, "Dad says if you come home and sign, he will retract the police report." That one mattered. It tied their threats directly to my silence. I want to ask you something. If you had been 25, suspended from work, sitting in a basement apartment with your name dragged through church, and your own mother texting, "Come home and sign," would you have gone back just to make the noise stop? Tell me honestly in the comments, because I still think about that moment. I did not go back. On June 7th, Detective Ruiz called Melissa and told her the theft allegations against me were collapsing. The so-called missing laptop had never been stolen. It had been logged into by Ryan at the office 3 days after Dad claimed I took it. The $7,920 customer deposit had been transferred internally between company accounts by someone using Ryan's credentials. In plain language, my father had filed a false report to pressure me. The hospital scheduled a formal review meeting for June 11th at 10 a.m. Denise Alvarez asked that all parties who had made allegations be present if possible. Melissa told me to attend, answer only direct questions, and let the documents speak. I wore a navy blouse, black slacks, and the same silver studs I wore to job interviews. Linda Mercer arrived 10 minutes early in a pressed linen jacket, carrying a blue accordion folder with 32 pages inside. She looked like somebody who had spent 40 years closing houses and watching liars sweat across conference tables. Ryan came in with my parents. He looked gray around the mouth. My father carried his anger the way some men carry cologne, too much and meant to announce itself. My mother had on a cream cardigan and the face she used at funerals, composed enough to pass for innocent if you did not know better. The conference room smelled like coffee and dry marker ink. A wall clock ticked too loudly. Denise sat at the head of the table with Compliance Director Eric Sloan and Detective Ruiz on speakerphone. Melissa sat to my left. Linda sat beside her and laid the accordion folder flat on the table. Denise began with procedure. Then Eric summarized what had been reviewed. Fraud reports, banking records, employment records, police correspondence. I said almost nothing. That was deliberate. I was not there for revenge. I was there for the record. When Denise asked whether anyone had additional documentation relevant to the allegations, Linda slid the folder forward. I do, she said. My mother blinked like she had forgotten Linda existed. Linda opened the folder and removed 3 clipped sets of papers. Her hands were steady. I was present at Easter dinner on March 31st when Karen Parker attempted to coerce Emily Parker into signing a false loan statement for $18,400. I wrote down what I witnessed that same night at 9:42 p.m. Here is that statement. Here is the timeline. And here are copies of the text messages Ryan sent attempting to trade the withdrawal of a police report for Emily's signature. No one interrupted her. Then Denise read the bank affidavit aloud. Mobile deposit of Farm Bureau insurance check into Parker Ridge Roofing operating, March 28, 8:43 a.m. Originating device registered to Ryan Parker. Then she read the Capital One trace, then the Synchrony trace, then Ryan's text. Dad says if you come home and sign, he will retract the police report. The room went so quiet I could hear the air vent turn on. Linda looked directly at my mother and said, Karen, I watched you slide that paper across the Easter ham. Do not call theft a misunderstanding in front of me. That was when my mother lost control. She stood up so fast her chair legs screeched. We are her parents, she said. Everything we did was to protect this family. She would have had that money because of us in the first place. My father stood too. His face went red all the way to the ears. If she had just signed, none of this would have happened. Detective Ruiz's voice came through the speaker, flat and clear. Mr. Parker, are you stating that the theft complaint was filed to obtain her signature? My father actually answered. He slapped one palm against the table and said, I was trying to make her come to the table like an adult. Nobody in that room needed me after that. He had done the prosecutor's job himself. Ryan still had not spoken. He was staring at the table, at the wood grain right in front of him, like it might open and swallow him. Then, so quietly that Denise asked him to repeat it, he said, I used my phone for the deposit. My mother turned on him then, not on me, on him. Ryan. He flinched, like the word had weight. Melissa did not smile. Denise did not raise her voice. Eric Sloan only took notes. Facts do not need volume. That room proved it. The meeting ended with 3 things on the record. First, Westfield Regional had no basis to continue my suspension. Second, Detective Ruiz would be forwarding additional documentation regarding identity theft and false reporting. Third, any further contact with my employer by my parents would go through counsel. As we stood up, my mother tried once more. She looked at me with wet eyes that did not reach her voice and said, Emily, do not do this to your father. I did not answer. Linda did. She picked up her folder, put on her glasses, and said, Karen, she did not do this. You did. That line stayed in the room after we left. I was reinstated at Westfield Regional on June 14th with back pay for the shifts I had missed. Denise walked me to my desk herself. Somebody had watered the small pothos plant on my windowsill while I was gone. I cried only once, and it was in the supply closet with my hand over my mouth so nobody would hear. By the end of June, Farm Bureau and First Valley Bank reversed the $18,400 transfer after the fraud findings were finalized. Capital One removed the $8,936 balance. Synchrony cleared the $2,031 line. Verizon deleted the $740 collection. My credit did not heal overnight, but the numbers stopped bleeding. The legal side moved slower. It always does. Statements were taken. Attorneys got involved. Ryan signed an affidavit admitting he had photographed my identification documents from an old tax folder in my parents' office, used my information for the applications, and deposited the insurance check through his phone at my father's direction. He agreed to restitution and cooperation. My parents did not call it a confession. They called it family business dragged into public. That difference matters. A week after the meeting, Hillside Covenant quietly removed my mother from the church finance team. My father stopped ushering. Nobody announced it from a pulpit. Nobody needed to. People just noticed who was no longer holding the offering plates, who was no longer leading the couples group, who stopped getting invited to backyard dinners. Parker Ridge Roofing's yard sign disappeared from my aunt's lawn by July. I did not call anyone. I did not post anything. Word moved on its own legs. That kind of consequence lands harder because no one can blame you for it. Ryan called me once at 11:38 p.m. in August. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me wanted the sound of his own voice carrying what he had done. He said, "I kept telling myself it was paperwork. Dad said it was temporary. Then it just kept getting worse, and every time I could have stopped it, I didn't." I sat on my bed with the lamp on and the window cracked to the dry summer night. For a second, I could hear his baby crying faintly in the background. He said, "I knew the report was false." That was the part he needed to say. I did not forgive him on that call. I did not comfort him either. I told him the truth. "You were not confused, Ryan. You were compliant." He cried after that, not loudly, just the sound of a grown man discovering that regret has a body. I still think about that call sometimes, not because it redeemed him, but because it made the whole thing more human and more terrible. Monsters are easy, weak people with choices are harder. As for my parents, I have not arrived at full forgiveness. I do not think honesty requires me to pretend I have. My mother has left 3 voicemails since Christmas. The last one said she misses my voice. My father sent me a text on my birthday that only said, "Happy 26th." I have not blocked them permanently, but I do not answer surprise calls and I do not meet without a witness. A door can stay unlocked without being opened. What I did build, though, is better than the family system I came from. On the first cool evening in September, Noah and I went to Linda Mercer's backyard for dinner. She made lemon chicken, rice pilaf, and green beans with too much butter. Noah brought bakery rolls from the store on the way over. The string lights over her patio flickered on just as the sky turned that flat blue that lasts for about 10 minutes before dark. Linda set out paper napkins with little orange leaves on them because she had bought them on clearance the year before and thought this was a worthy use. No one there asked me to be smaller for their comfort. No one asked me to keep a lie alive because it looked better from the street. Peace is smaller than forgiveness. Sometimes it is just a table that has room for you. We ate. Linda told a story about a disastrous escrow closing in 1997. Noah reached for my hand under the table once and did not make a show of it. At one point, Linda lifted her iced tea and said, "To records. They save women more often than pride does." She was right. That is the ending I have for now. Not a reunion, not a movie speech, not everybody healed and hugging in a driveway at sunset. Just my name back, my work back, my money back, my facts intact, and a life that is quieter, truer, and built with people who chose to show up. If the people who hurt you were the same people who raised you, would you ever let them back in, even a little? Tell me in the comments. Take care of yourself tonight, and I'll be back soon with another story.